when we look at absolute value, just think of it this way. Let's say I set a chair in the middle of the room, and anybody want to volunteer? Anybody want to volunteer to sit in this chair? Emma, do you want to sit in the chair? No? Mitch, you want to sit in the chair? You don't? Okay. Well, if we had somebody sit in the chair, and this was like a number line, and you wanted to stand 2 feet from the chair, and you're on this number line, is there only one place you could stand at 2? Is that the only place to stand, 2 feet from the chair? And you could go -2. Both of them are 2 units distance from the chair, right? And what absolute value is talking about is shortcutting things a little bit so that we're talking about the distance to 0. So think of absolute value, distance to 0. And of course, if you're in the positive, if you're greater than 0, it's just x. But if you're looking at the distance to 0 and you're in the negative, what do you do to find the distance to 0? Well, if you're at -2 and you're 2 units from 0, how do you get 2? Well, you take the opposite of -2. So when you see absolute value and you're looking at the distance to 0, 2 units is going to be in the positive, just whatever 2 is. But in the negative, you have to use -2 because the opposite of -2 is 2 units distance. So what that does as far as an equation, instead of y equal to x, it just goes along here, y equal to x. What happens to these negatives? If you're 1, if this is -1 and this is -2, we're going to look at the distance, which is still going to be 2, and the distance is still going to be 1. So absolute value, essentially what happens is this flips up to here. So the absolute value of x, you knew that. Y equal to x is this graph, but y equal to absolute value of x is going to be this one. Good with that? Is that all right? And you remember this pretty well. Graphing it, all you have to do is if you see y equal x squared, show me with your arms x squared, -4, down 4. So it looks something like this. Now, if you're taking the absolute value of this, I'm going to draw the regular y equal x squared -4. And what happens to all of these y values that are below the axes? What happens to them? This -4 becomes what? 4. And then this 0 is still 0. This -1 becomes 1. And you can see this going like that. And so the absolute value is going to be drawn regular, negatives flipped up. Because that's the distance to 0. We have no negatives to deal with. Just real quick here, the domain of this one was all real numbers. The range is from what to what? -4 to infinity. What's the domain of this one and the range here? Turn to your neighbor real quick. Tell them what the domain and range of this one is. Did you get all reals? And what's the range? What to infinity? 0, yep. Now, most of the time it will be 0, but it doesn't have to be if the whole thing were starting above. So what they're saying here is if f of x is greater than 0, you just draw it normal. Greater than 0, no problem. If it's less than 0, you flip. And that's what we did with this part. You try these two, draw these two, and then I want you to draw the absolute value of those. When you graph y equal to x, it looks like that. What happens to this x plus 3? It goes up 3. So some of you are using your iPad Notability and circling and moving. I love that. Use that. And so this is going to be 3. This is going to be negative 3. Looks great. What is the absolute value of this then? Which part stays the same? The positive part. So this part, good. I don't like that color. I like this one. Okay. What happens to this negative part? What does it do? Flips up. So you can see this flips up to here. How many had the V for that? Any questions on that? So you just draw it regular, flip up the negative. Use that to graph this one. X squared minus 2. That's kind of easy, but did you get something like this? Something like that? It's kind of like what we had before. All right, so it looks like all is well. Just take the y values and take the absolute value. Think of what this f of x means. What is f of x again? F of x is the same as y. So we're taking the absolute value of y, essentially. But is that the same as this one? F of the absolute value of x. Do you think that's going to be the same? Do you think it's going to be equal? No, and it's not. It's going to be very different. So we're going to play around with this one, and this one's a little tougher. So hang in there. We can do it. So f of x is equal to negative x squared plus 3. We're going to graph that. Show me x squared. What's negative x squared? Plus 3. Up 3, right? So it's going to go like that. What is the absolute value of f of x? Well, anything positive stays the same, and the rest flips up. This is the absolute value of f of x. Now, this one's weird. Here's your graph. The absolute value of f of x. If I took f of negative 2, f of negative 1, f of 0, f of, running out of space here, f of 1, f of 2, okay? When I say absolute value here, what am I doing to these x's? Positive. They become positive, right? So this one here is going to be compared how to this one? The same. This one is going to be compared how to this one? The same. So what we can do is when we look at a table of 0, f of the absolute value of x, essentially what happens here is we have negative 2, negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, 2. This is just f of 2, f of 1, f of 0, and f of 1, f of 2. What just disappeared totally off the map? What totally disappeared? All the f of negatives, right? This side here, all those negatives, gone. So what we're going to do to draw this one is we're going to erase all the negatives. Just erase them. All the positives are good. Great. But now it looks like these are going to be the same. So all you have to do then is reflect this side here. Now this is a boring one because it all turned out to be the same. Sorry, but that's how that one worked. So what you do for f of the absolute value of x, the first thing you do is erase all values x less than or 0. Just erase them. Then the second part is reflect about y-axis. It's weird, but that's essentially what happens. What are the zeros for this one here? X minus 3, x minus 1, x plus 2. What are the zeros? 3, 1, and negative 2. So essentially this is going to go like this. I'll let you draw that. Just sketch that in. And we'll do this here. Would you draw that? And then I want you to draw f of x absolute value and f of the absolute value of x. Try it and see what you get. So we did the f of absolute value of f of x. We did that. Looks good. We just flipped everything and drew all the positives the same. With this one, you're going to erase the negative. It's gone. And then here's the positive. We're going to just reflect it. And that's what f of the absolute value of x. Very different. They're not the same at all. All right. Before we do reciprocals, I want to zip down to, I know these pictures are so weird. Go to 3ABC. You're going to sketch this. Sketch absolute value of f of x, f of absolute value of x. I thought I had, yep, I do have another set here and another set here. So they're all set up for you. 1, 2, 3. Go ahead and do those. And the reciprocal graph is on the next video.